Hey Alice, welcome back to the Mad Tea Party. We got a familiar panel this evening, all faces you've seen before on this hole. Lots of faces in my hole tonight. We have to my right, the one and only David Pena. Check out, what is it, Gaze Within Destruction?
No, just Gaze Within.
Gaze Within. On Instagram, he does really cool visual art, mixed media, comic book, photography stuff. It was really interesting and unique. And then we also have the one and only LazyPhalanges looking exquisite this evening.
Spectacular.
So beautiful.
So beautiful. And equally as beautiful, we have the March Hare, a very familiar face who you've seen many times. Almost as much as you've seen me, Alice.
Almost.
Yeah.
I'll be hopping in and out. Well,
The
visually.
bunny hop.
You catch me in my studio doing the bunny hop. I am coming straight from the satellite this evening again, Miss Alice. So
we called this council this evening. We are actually potentially we're doing something completely different, but this is kind of an impromptu last minute decision I made. And all of these brave warriors heeded the call.
It's sort of like a beta test.
Yeah, we're testing who's the beta.
yeah.
Not it.
Not it.
Not it.
Lazy's
It's
hand.
me. It was me all along.
Look how happy he is about it.
Oh, that's why you have him on the bottom, huh?
He's like guilty.
Yep.
Now you have to fuck my wife.
Yeah.
Damn it.
She's real ugly, so.
I know. It's just.
But I thought this would be a good group of people because there's lots of crossover between all of our opinions, but obviously we're all human beings and have different opinions on every issue. So there's going to be times where I agree with Lazy on something. There's going to be times where I agree with David on something. And then there's going to be times where I agree with neither of you. I think you're both wrong. And that's when I'll agree with Neif. So.
But only if you disagree with both of us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to disagree with me.
Yeah, Neif will be like, the problem is you said government.
Yeah, I'm just.
Should the government be able to? And went from there.
Right.
But yeah, I guess first thing, let's just go ahead and get into it. Talk about immigration, ICE, deportation, this administration versus last administration in that topic. Who wants to go first? Do you want to start? You want to give like your case, or how do you want to do this? Because this is not like, we're not doing a debate, right? It's like these are just four people with opinions. So I don't know how, if we're gonna do it, if we were to do it like debate style, we'd be like, here's the topic. I'd be like, your time, and then I'd be like, his time, and I'd moderate it. But that's not what we're doing exactly. So
it being a conversation, it's inherently going to get into a debate about things, but we're not running it like an official debate.
Yeah, because the way we should start it is we can talk first. We'll talk about just topical stuff, what's happening now, but then the actual goal is not going to be that. It's like, can we all agree on like if we were rulers of the United States, which immigration reform would we want. But the talking about this topic only ends once we like all agree on one thing. So we all kind of have to
Oh,
like
okay.
we kind of have to like compromise.
It's almost the opposite of a debate. We all have to reach a middle ground.
Yep, and stop. So it can't be like we can't be like so like whoever's like the most pro anti-immigration blah blah blah. It's not like we can land on that because we all have like different positions and opinions and
Yeah.
stuff. So you have to kind of be willing to
I
like
like I like this idea a lot because it has a resolution. Like
yeah
it has an end goal,
yeah
right? That's really cool. And I think that we could probably achieve that. Like find even if we like disagree really strongly about things, we can find a point of it where we agree. So cool, yeah. Um, I guess I'll go first. Um, my stance on I guess like deportation specifically um, is there's two arguments here. First conversation is moral. First, second conversation is legal. And I think whenever people talk about this, they really muddy those lines quite a bit, whether or not something is legal or moral, right? So I think from a legal standpoint, there's nothing unconstitutional being done. It's not like these are impeachable or punishable crimes in a legal sense. Um, Morally, that's tougher. It's what's immoral is sending people here on false pretense. And it's very like the next person has the shit end of the stick on that. So if you try to clean it, of course, you're going to look like the bad person there. That being said, I think that while it's in America's legal right to kick people out without any reason, I don't know if it's the morally correct choice in every situation, right? So it's like there are probably situations where we could all agree about this, that it's like, well, that person should leave, right? I don't think that is the case if they're, for example, like adding value to the community. It's probably like not even really a moral argument as much as it's not practical. Um, but then it's like that requires like you looking at the individual, which I think is maybe my point here, is that you should look at it on an individual case to case basis, I think. And I guess that's my stance on it. Who wants to go next?
Um, I'll chime in here on this. I think that there's an issue that people seem to ignore with a lot of deportation stuff, which is that there's a lot of people who want to come here that aren't breaking the law, and so they're not here. So, like a case by case basis of somebody who like basically cut the line to just walk in anyway is like kind of unfair to those people.
Okay.
It's
So
like,
sorry, go ahead.
well, I'm saying because it's kind of like, well, we're not doing a case by, like, we're not reevaluating the people that are trying to get here because we're too busy with the people that are already here. But they're only here because they basically cut those people off and just came here anyway.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I think there's a little bit of a like maybe it would be proper to like, no, we're basically just sending everybody back. And then if you want to come, we'll evaluate you on a case by case basis when you try to come here legally.
Okay. Is that your yeah, let me say, I guess, what give your best pro deportation argument?
Um,
If that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's where what your stance is. So I guess just present
yeah,
your.
my stance, I guess, so my stance is more pro deportation, and it's because it's like you you're not supposed to be here in the first place. That's why it's illegal. If you're talking about people that came here legally, if you're talking about people that are here legally, I'm not making an argument that they should be deported. I don't understand why they would be.
So is that's both your legal and your moral argument?
Yeah, because I would say otherwise, like otherwise, I think you would have to kind of, if you want to like ignore that argument, you would have to argue for completely open borders. Because I
Okay.
was like, wait, why shouldn't people come here illegally if that's how we're going to treat it? What would be the reason for them to not come here illegally?
Okay, so you're saying that a immigration argument is the same as a borders argument. If you have immigration without a process, you basically have no borders. Is that
Yeah. So then I would say so. So if somebody comes here ignoring your process, and we're not just going to deport them, what are we doing with them? Because essentially, that like, do they get to just ignore that?
Can I chime in real quick?
um uh was that the end of what you were
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Neef, go ahead and then give us
Well,
your stance both on
oh,
the
okay. Well,
legality.
I wasn't trying to break off where he was at. I was trying to just interject a moment on
Okay.
saying that where we are with this discussion has already, and I was going to bring this up when it got to me, but it's already kind of hit there. It is like you're saying, Alex, it is very much, we have to separate the idea of first, we need to decide how we personally feel about the idea of borders, because that's where it lies. That's where the very first thing, if you don't believe in a border at all, then there's no other argument past that. You know what I'm
There's no
saying?
such thing as immigration at that point.
Right. If you
Yeah.
believe in borders, then you start getting into nuance. Then you get into legality, like Lazy's saying. He's saying, that's the law. That's the way the law is written. We should follow it that way. All right. So this is kind of a couple of separate things. So if we want to, I just want
Okay.
to throw that in before I chimed in on any of my opinion.
Yeah, why don't you present your legal and moral stance on deportation, specifically what's going on right now?
Well, that's the thing is, I can't really say specifically on what's going on now
Sure,
because when you look into
that's
legality,
fair.
it's across the board. You got to
The
look at it
facts
the
are
same
we
way.
have no idea what's going on right now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea being is that what's going on right now, my opinion on it is like always, it's hype. You know, it's whatever the argument is to support or put down the current administration, whether you like them or despise them.
Yeah.
People can quickly say Obama deported more people, but then people can quickly say, well, that was blotted. It's whatever. The idea being is, I believe that. I mean, Alice pretty much understands my belief on a border has to do with personal defense, you know, and that steps outside of what our discussion is because we're talking about a nation. And so if we have to look at it constitutionally, which is where I have to look into all of these, where I have to come from in a lot of these arguments, being, pretty much an anarchist, because as an anarchist, I cannot necessarily say I believe in a border because that's somebody else deciding what's there. Now, would I respect personally a border? Well, yeah, because if a border is guarded, I'm not trying to get murked just because I want to go over there.
As a concept, order as a concept.
Right. As a matter of fact, I probably don't want to go over there if there's a bunch of people over there trying to murk each other. So, now what I talk about with like constitutional anarchism, which is an odd thing to say, but that's not really a belief. That is where I have to come from in my arguments. Our
Yeah, because we're talking
Constitution,
about law, so it's like
right,
we have to already kind of
right. We're
yeah,
playing. I'm playing this game, so I got to play by these rules.
yeah.
And when it comes to the Constitution, and this is where this really gets interesting, because our Constitution, from what I recall, doesn't say citizen; it says human. So there's an argument that people who are not citizens don't have the same rights. But the fact is that our Constitution doesn't grant us rights. It recognizes the rights the government does not have to infringe upon.
Yeah.
And the government constantly does. So For me to say I think everything's going correctly would be a complete fucking lie because it ain't. It's not ever going correctly. So, constitutionally speaking, yes, everybody should have their due process, regardless if they're a citizen or not. The problem in lying there is the enforcement of that, because then it goes back to what Lazy's talking about. If you're getting due process, that's fine, but then you have to immediately recognize that coming into the country without going through proper due process is illegal. So once you have done that, no matter what, you are now a criminal at large. Whether or not people should be deported, that's kind of a whole nother thing. That also goes back to the legality of it. It's like what Lazy's saying. There's people that get in line and they wait years and years and years before they can finally get their real citizenship, you know? And if somebody just walks through the door and nothing happens to them and they can get all the benefits of any other American citizen, then it's not so much against us naturally born citizens that grew up with this quote unquote privilege. That's worse off for the people who were coming and immigrating from places, typically, very very much more financially poor, coming into this country with more of a struggle to try to follow the laws and do the right thing rather than come in and you're already skating by the law coming in. So naturally, working, you have to do illegally because you can't be on paper. So it runs you into the black market. And people look at black market, they immediately think drugs, and that's a fraction of what the black market is. Black market is anything that the government doesn't regulate and can't regulate.
Okay.
And while I'm not about government regulation, I'm highly against it. That's where a lot of these things, it's very much, it kind of gets to a tribal thing where it's like, look, personally, I'm not trying to run up and down my street and point out who's illegal, you
Right.
know,
Right.
for standard victimless crime. Um, there can be an argument put that border jumping the border basically and immigrating illegally can be is a victimless crime, but the problem with a government set up the way it is, it makes it not victimless because as a taxpayer, as a taxpaying citizen, I think, okay, I want immigrants to come here. Everybody wants to come here. It's a great place to be. They come in legally, cool. That's what they do. They come in, they get their numbers, and then they're paying taxes like all of us, While I don't agree with any tax plan and all that, I'm going by the guidelines here. They come in, they become a citizen, they can enjoy the quote unquote benefits that we all enjoy as citizens because of our tax dollars. Somebody coming in illegally is not going to be working legally, is not going to be paying taxes legally
Let me reel you back in
inherently.
real quick.
Right. Now, people say it does happen and this and that, but I mean, I know many, many citizens that get around paying taxes,
Let me reel you
you
in real
know.
quick. We're not so much discussing the morality of immigration as much as deportation.
Okay. So, and then that's when it gets back to deportation. That's when you're looking at if it's a crime, what is the punishment?
Okay. And that
All right.
you're saying that is a legal and moral argument.
Well, yeah. And then now we're getting into, well, if you don't deport somebody and they're convicted of coming into the country illegally, do you put them in jail? Do you fine them? You know, what is the outcome? If somebody robs somebody, they get put in jail and they have to pay restitution, Somebody damages somebody's stuff, they have to pay for it to be repaired. Sometimes they get fined, whatever, restitution. What is the restitution for jumping the border and jumping the line of other people who are planning on coming in to be a tax-paying citizen? And that's where it's the only thing that you can think of is that seems correct is deportation. And the term makes it sound really crazy because, well, if you're getting sent back to a country that's so bad that you had to flee it, well, then yes, that's a punishment. But if you're just trying to come somewhere because it's a easier ride, then and you don't want to go through the normal corridors, that brings up the question of why not? Because then we get an immigration policy. Who do we allow in? Because people that aren't allowed in will come to sneak in. And that's where we run into the criminal element. They talk about gang members, cartel members, different criminal people running from prison and other countries coming here because we don't have extradition, or they can get in here and slip away, you know. And it's a common thing. Back in the day, people used to say, you did a crime, you ran to Mexico or you went to Canada, but because certain countries don't have extradition laws for certain crimes. So if you go somewhere and you committed a specific crime here and that country doesn't recognize it as a crime, they won't let the US government come and take you away. So what a lot of people don't think about when it comes to this is that side of the coin, not just people that are struggling and just want to run into the country, not criminals that are trying to come here and be part of a gang. What about the people that are running from crimes that they know they can get into America and slip away into the system and not get brought back to some other country where they might be being looked for murder, rape, a lot of stuff, you know?
So
So it kind of goes in a case by case, a person by person is, you
I,
know,
I think I agree with that. It
so,
depends on the person, right?
right. So in order to do that, though, you have to run around and find everybody who is already illegally in the country that has already committed that crime.
So
And that's where
there should
things
be
are
like
crazy.
maybe a process for becoming a citizen, which there already is, right? But like
There is.
process
That's the
for
point.
becoming a citizen once you're here illegally, and then like that's a case by case kind of thing. It's not so black and white. There's a lot of nuance.
Yes, but you also get back to what Lazy was talking about. Somebody that's been here for 10 years that isn't actually a citizen. They got work visas and they have to keep reapplying, and they're very regulated and restricted what they can do. And they're here for 10 years and they learn the stuff. They got to take the test. They do all the things and they finally get their citizenship. And then somebody else comes in illegally, gets caught after a month being here. And instead of getting deported, they get brought into a rehabilitation center or something and then get frontlined to get their citizenship. So they're not committing a crime anymore, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, then it
So,
kind of sounds like if you want to be a citizen here, you should come here legally. That's
yeah,
the
All
case.
right.
it makes
Let,
and it skip the line basically. And that's what a big argument it is. And it's understood and it makes sense if that's the laws we're riding on.
all right. Let's give it to David now, and
Yeah.
then we can open it up for discussion.
Yeah, because I'm probably the most pro open borders in this whole discussion.
Well,
So
Neef sounds like he's completely for open borders. It's just that we don't have that.
Yeah. He's like, no, no.
Well,
what's a
yeah,
what's a country?
it's not that I'm about open borders. I'm just not really about borders unless they're,
Nations.
well,
yeah,
you said
it's,
what is a country? But the interesting thing is, America
right.
didn't have closed borders until 1917. Before 1917, it was just completely open.
Is that 1917?
Yeah, it was like
Okay.
called the Immigration Act. Beforehand, and just in general, most nations in the past just didn't really do that.
So for a long time after America's established, there is just an open immigration policy, basically.
And that was for most countries.
Okay.
For most countries, you just kind of went into a country and just like you kind of just lived there.
And then that kind of definitionally makes you American after, I guess, a certain amount of time. Is that?
Yeah. Or
I
even,
wonder how the laws apply to those people,
or
like
even
in that time.
well, no, I mean there were
What,
still okay. So like he said, what he mentioned about the Constitution is
when did work visas start happening though?
I don't know about those, but for example, what you mentioned about the Constitution is the Constitution actually makes two separate things. It talks about people and then citizens. So, for example, free speech is like a people thing. Like the moment you set foot in America, that's just something that's granted to you. So is like due process, and so and even the right to bear arms that technically should be just by like going here. Period. Like I think
They're
illegal.
natural God-given rights. They're not given by the government.
Yeah, like for example, I think an illegal immigrant should have the right to like buy a gun if they wanted to.
Work visas started in 52.
So I think there's an issue
Does
with
it
that.
say where or that we start them? Because that's a nation. That's a.
Sorry, in America, work visas started in
All
1950.
right. I'm curious
So
as to when it was a thing because that's not an American word.
We still haven't Lazy, go ahead, but then we still haven't I want to hear like your kind of stance.
Yeah, I'll do deportation, but Lazy can go first.
oh, I just want to say about the Constitution thing. I think the problem is that a lot of those things are impossible as written. So, for example, due process for everyone makes a war impossible because it means our soldiers cannot shoot enemy combatants without due process of a court trial.
I see
So
what
it
you're
doesn't.
saying.
So it's not actually like a possible thing to
I
have this.
think that I think when you talk about soldiers fighting, that's when you have to get in a war declaration, and that has to do with war law. That's why certain instances we would go places and we weren't allowed to shoot, and the soldiers were
Right.
like, "You literally have to be getting shot at before you can open fire back," and that's because they're not. There was no declaration of war. I think when people declare war, that pushes a lot of that. That's pretty much what that means.
Yeah. So for example, what he's
The
talking about.
Constitution doesn't make an exception for war, so that would still be anti-constitutional.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that that's the loophole they're going for. So for example, when it comes to Trump, Trump has declared war on Venezuela.
What?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah, like recently, yeah. That's well, he's specifically declaring war Venezuela slash he's saying that MS-13 or whatever gangs they have are part of Venezuela, therefore I'm declaring war on them. And that's why he can get away with like avoiding the Constitution.
So he
No,
I don't.
that's two different
that would.
things.
Yeah, I don't know about a war declaration is a huge thing.
Going to war against cartel and going to war against Venezuela is while in practice may not be that dissimilar, the wording there is like kind of significant.
Which is why Democrats are against what he's doing. So for example, the last time this was used, I mean, it's not exactly the last time, but the most famous example was like with Japan. That's why they were allowed to like take Japanese people in America and put them in like camps, was because we had like a war with Japan, and this would even include Japanese people who were citizens.
Okay. Right. The internment camps and
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's using the same logic that because we're being invaded by these people, therefore they don't have the
So
same.
you're not saying Trump has declared war on Venezuela. That's not what you're saying.
Kind of.
Okay, well that's no,
It's not a kind of thing.
that's either happened or it hasn't, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of
no, I'm looking it up.
like declaring, like saying the rhetoric.
My understanding
war
is
on the
that he
cartel.
declared. He
he
made
he
it
made a
that.
proposal to the president apparently that he would go invade I guess the cartels and stuff.
That's a different thing than
Yeah,
Trump getting
basically
on a
say
podium and
he
saying
probably he
America is
probably
not war
threatened
with Venezuela.
saying, look, we're not going to listen to what y'all. We're not going to wait for y'all to clean up y'all's mess. We'll just send our they'll that and people don't realize all these years that anytime we hear about a cartel getting busted or some kingpin, that was our military doing a military strike. And that's all he in essence did is the same thing that any other federal did, and the CIA and all that shit is he declared this gang, which is so big it's a freaking cartel, to be terrorists. So therefore, they're nation enemies of the nation,
Yeah.
meaning it makes them their own nation within a nation, if you will. It separates them from where they are located, and it says, look, these are basically insurgents in your country if you have them there. And if we find in any way that you're actually assisting them, then it puts you on documentation as being a terrorist assistant country, which happens all over the fucking Middle East, you know. And it all it does is it brings a cartel or somebody like that onto the level of being able to be dealt with by our military. And that's all war law. That's all the shit that they have to dance around to be able to do that, you know. It was happening all through the 80s, you know.
We've gotten way into the weeds. I still want to hear what your stance
Oh,
is.
Yeah.
okay, so this goes to a broader thing. I disagree with police stopping a person because they're assuming they've done something wrong.
Does this tie back into deportation?
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, the crime would be deportation.
Okay.
What I'm opposed
It's like a
is,
stop and frisk. Like I agree with you. That's fucked up.
which is what they're doing. If they
I
see
see.
someone that looks like Latino, they're stopping them, and then if they're like illegal, then they're taking them.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. You're impeding. Like you don't know that that's not a citizen, and now you are like harassing them, and which
That's
I'm sure
called
has happened
that's
more
called
times than it hasn't.
profiling.
Yeah, which is happening right now. It's happening right now in
Yeah.
that state.
It's called
Profiling,
profiling.
it's
Yeah, profiling.
discrimination. That's a
Yeah.
lot of police authority I do not approve of. I
So
agree.
so when it comes to my pro deportation stance, it's this: if someone commits a crime, like for example, someone is an illegal immigrant and they were like drunk driving, immediate like deportation.
Okay.
Well, jail time, they serve whatever jail they have to do, and then like immediate
That
deportation.
actually brings up a good point, David, because if they immediately get deported, um, something like a DUI, it doesn't seem like a big deal because it's kind of victimless. But what if there is a victim?
Yeah. Well,
So
which is why I said if there is a victim, then they should serve like their jail time.
now,
And then
now what you've done is you've made them a citizen by making them a criminal, and they're part of the process, and they're actually getting benefits of the country.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
But if you
what
immediately deport them, you're not
now,
recognizing them.
and if you understand our prison systems, which aren't stellar, think about this. A gang member who's looking at life in a shithole prison in another country can run the fuck up here, get away from being yanked back down there, run amok here. If he gets caught doing some shit, the prisons here is way better than his fucking lifestyle was down there. So he's still fucking doing good, and they might give him a life sentence if he murks somebody.
I mean,
And
yeah.
now he's here on our tax dollars,
And the
getting
alternative
bring out
is
the
just
child.
deport them, which is realistically just a slap on the wrist for a DUI, right? So
Right.
it's like
Now, if you
I
right,
agree with what you're saying. If you don't want to put them in jail here, you just kind of want to get rid of them, which is also like kind of a slap on the wrist. You're not even being punished. You're just like you need to.
that also depends. If it's somebody that's on the run from going to an El Salvadorian prison, they're definitely not a slap on the wrist to send their ass back. You
Well,
know,
that's a slap on the wrist. What we're doing, what El Salvador decides to do, is different.
that's what I'm saying. So it's like what people are fleeing isn't always just a shitty situation or a war torn country or a cartel run little town.
See, but whether or not like they're going to get arrested when they get deported is not, you know, our government would it would be the same, right? Like it's not like maybe that's going to be like a really bad situation for you and you're going to get locked up, but we're not doing that to you.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that's the whole idea is you have to deter people from wanting to commit the crime. It's very much like our politicians who commit these loophole crimes when it comes to finances. There's no deterrence for them, much like police officers that are corrupt. There's no deterrence for them when they have qualified immunity. So they're like, why in the fuck am I worried about not committing this crime? I get away with it. Why am I worried about running the border at some country that, because if they arrest me for some shit after I run amok, I'm gonna still get 3 hots and a cot. They're gonna take me off the street, you know.
Okay, so your stance, I think, is you were saying that no stop and frisk, and um, for certain crimes, it's immediate deportation.
Specifically crimes with victims, which I still count you like driving under the influence, kind of like.
I agree. That's like maybe not that time of victimless crime, but quite potentially you're putting other people at
Like
risk.
yeah, any crime that would like put people in risk, I would.
You could even call that a violent crime. Right?
Yeah.
Reckless endangerment.
Reckless endangerment, stuff like that, or like if they're breaking into a person's house, even if there's no one in the house, when you're breaking into someone's house, you're kind of running the potential to like to commit violence against whoever the homeowners, because
Yeah.
you don't know what's the situation.
That definitely falls under violence.
Yeah.
Theft is actually considered to be violence.
I mean, I maybe, but I would be a little.
It's
we can
considered
get into that, but we shouldn't.
right.
Because for that, it depends on like, okay, are they stealing like chocolates from like Walmart versus like that from like a person's personal like.
I agree with Neef that
Well, the eye
we can table
yeah, the idea doesn't go about who the victim is. The idea has to do with the intent of the person to steal. Robbery is different than burglary, because robbery, I'll look at you in the face and take it from you, and you know I'm taking it. Burglary, I sneak in and take it. Both have the intent of me saying, I am with force removing something from your possession. That's why it's viewed with the NAP, you know, not non-aggression principle as also being violence. That's why when the government forces money out of you, it's an act of violence.
Taxation is theft. Theft is violence. So right. I mean, yeah. If I steal your motorcycle, we're gonna sell that to feed your kids. So that's right. Violent. Now your kids are starving. That's violence.
Your intent was I'm taking it regardless of how you feel.
Yeah, or what kind of suffering that's going to cause you.
Right.
Yeah. But so okay, I guess we don't have like a clear-cut answer. Do you think deportation is unconstitutional / illegal?
Well, technically it is unconstitutional.
Okay, elaborate.
Because like I said, in the founding of the Constitution, in the founding of this country, it really wasn't a thing. It's you could say it's a new law, so that's a whole other like separate thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So there's a difference between unconstitutional and illegal then.
Yeah.
Because there might be laws added in later, but that's not okay. So
it's
you're
not
saying
like the core, it's not the core.
We have plenty of laws that are unconstitutional.
Okay, fair enough. Those are two different questions.
Wait, can I for clarity real quick though? Are you saying that it's not constitutional because it's not in the Constitution, or that it's like anti-constitutional?
I'm not saying it's particularly anti-constitutional itself. The method that you go about doing it could like be that. For example,
typically,
process and a bunch of other stuff or whatever. Or
typically
like, for example, if you're targeting people like that one student for like the speech, like you could use unconstitutional means to deport people.
The deportation itself
is not
right.
Is not
unconstitutional means it actually goes against the constitutional principles. There can be non-constitutional, which isn't going against it. It's just not recognized.
So like I'm not anti-deportation, but I'm anti-using the wrong methods to do it.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think the way in which Trump is deporting people is illegal and like an impeachable defense? Yeah. Or like offense?
Yes. But there just isn't enough power to like impeach him.
So what is he doing that's illegal?
Well, for example, like the student and the free speech part.
Go
on. There's a Middle Eastern student who was like advocating against Israel, and they went into his actual like house and like just took him by force. He was here with like an actual visa. He has like a wife here that they're having like a kid and everything, but he got taken away specifically because of that. The issue is when they deported him, they're not saying, "Oh, we're just deporting you because of this." They're specifically saying we're deporting you because of your speech.
Now, David, that I was never clear on. Did they deport him or was it a college thing? I know it was a college, like they were saying that he was on a college campus. And the first thing that was happening was him being removed from there was already an issue. But I don't know if it had something to do with the college also.
Well,
But
he was
I
going to
never
speeches
heard
and stuff at the
clearly whether or
college.
not he get deported.
I believe I can look it up, but I believe he did. Let me see.
Okay. And that is illegal because of the reasons they gave for
Because of the
why?
yeah. So once again, going back, I'm not against deportation or removing people. I just wanted to be for the right reasons. So, for example, if he was actually here doing terrorist shit or whatever, or like committing actual victim crimes, then I would be fine with him being deported. But I'm not okay with him being deported
Oh,
just
I think
for.
what it is he was here on a visa, and because he was protesting, I think they might have tried to use it as a
So I
terroristic
understand.
thing. Like saying if you're here on a visa and you're not a citizen, then and you start saying certain stuff, they can construe it as you being here as a terrorist or an activist against the country, and you're not allowed here anymore. That might be what they did to
So
him, which
wait,
is kind of lame.
he had a visa to be here?
Yeah, he had a visa. He was a student. He had a visa to be here.
So that's not
I
even
think
really
that,
deportation, is it?
well, that's the thing is that's when it gets into what does the Constitution say? Does he have the right to, did they give him due process? Does he have the right to have free speech because he's not a citizen? He's on a visa.
If someone's here on a green card, do you okay,
Green card's not a visa.
visa. If you're here on a visa,
Yeah, you're not a citizen.
excuse
That
me,
means you can go to school or work.
there
You
is a
can be,
difference.
yeah,
He was here
huge
on a
difference.
visa, but he was also in the process of like
Okay.
becoming a full citizen.
Okay. So uh do you have to, and I'm not making I'm not asking morally, I'm asking legally. Do you have to follow a certain due process in order to deport someone that is on a visa? Or can you do it arbitrarily for no reason?
Yeah, can the government just decide to revoke someone's visa?
Because I think the issue here is the reasons given why they're doing this, which is a moral conversation, not a legality conversation. And this is where the lines get really muddy with this topic. Is I'm specifically asking, is it illegal to deport someone? And it sounds like you're saying because of the reasons given, but I'm pretty sure you can make someone leave without giving a reason, without a stated reason. You can just say it's time to go, and you don't really even have to explain yourself. I think is how that works.
I don't. Well, I think it has with your a work visa or a visa gives you a time that you're allowed to be here and do whatever the visa says. So if they find you in violation of that visa, then they can go ahead and deport you. I think the whole idea is because you have a visa, they can't just throw you out of the damn country. That you have to, they have to prove that you violated it. It's because it's not a citizenship, but it's also not the same as just showing up. Because the idea is if you are here just showing up illegally, they can grab you and throw you the hell out. That's supposed to be the whole point. It's like, oh, you didn't come through the channels, head on back out.
But yeah, and but
So,
this guy did go through the channels.
so
Right. Well, that's
my
what I'm
my
saying.
understanding of the reason that they gave was essentially that the protesting uh basically showed that he was here under false pretenses. So that's why they're revoking his visa, and because his visa is being revoked, he's getting kicked out of the country.
Yeah, but
That's what I was thinking it was. Is that's sounds they figured a way to say, look, him protesting means
And
he's not here to go to school. He's here to protest, and
and
so that
yep,
violates the visa.
as
Which
far as from what I heard,
honestly, to me, that sounds like some bullshit.
yeah, it is bullshit.
as far as I
But
heard,
it sounds
they
like they're
also
legal.
used like previous organizations that they tied it back to that he was part of that he did not declare when he was applying for a visa from foreign countries and stuff. that they said,
Oh,
had we
okay.
known that, would not have granted the visa. So basically, according to them, I don't necessarily
Right.
agree with them for doing this. They said
Right.
that they were claiming that there was a lot of omissions on his application that would have denied the visa in the first place.
But they didn't notice that when he first applied.
Right.
So in essence, him protesting made them look further into his stuff
And then they
and
said,
to
okay,
find
now we
out which it's like you're saying, that's kind of some bullshit because it's like, okay, if you weren't supposed to get granted the visa in the first place, but y'all did it because y'all didn't do your job well enough. Now he done upset you. So now you're going to go do your job well enough to discover how, yeah, that's, and that's bureaucratic nonsense.
Yeah, and on top,
Whether whether
on
it's
top of that,
legal, it's whether it's legal, it gets into that's some bullshit.
yeah, and on top of that, it's done like this would have never happened if like the whole Israel stuff never started. So it's not like something he was already doing prior exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like when he first applied.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's,
It's done like you said, it's done post, it's done after the fact.
right, and things like that get done on both sides as a show of power. It's to, you know, make an example.
Yeah, because even if it's not that many people they do it to, the point is what they're trying to say is, hey, you're not allowed to talk about that, or you're not allowed to protest that. And it scares other people that might be on visas too to no longer like speak out.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's kind of a weird case also though, because it's sort of a like, I think it's totally fair of a country to say, hey, we're not granting you a visa if you're here to protest. Like at the outset, not after the fact, but at the outset.
Yeah.
To be like, you're here to work or go to school. You're not here
Oh
to.
yeah, I mean that's and that's the whole thing. It's like that's why I talk about my beliefs, my personal beliefs. I have to step aside and say, look, it's just like you go to another country. You're playing by their rules.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm sorry to say, I wish the world was everybody was groovier, but I know if I go to a country with crazy fucking laws, I'm not going to break those damn laws because I'm not going to expect preferential treatment just because I'm an American, you know?
Yeah.
And and I'm definitely not going to go to those countries and start protesting against those laws. I'm just going to say I don't live in that country because I don't agree with those laws, And unfortunately, from what I've found, this country has the least amount of fucked up laws to dance around, even though we have a lot of fucking fucked up laws. You know, it's like I don't even know if it's the least amount of laws. It's we have the most freedoms, if you will, you know, and we also have such a fumbled system. It's a double-edged sword. It makes it easier to be free from a lot of BS, but it also allows a lot of serious BS to be gotten away with.
So because this person was here on a visa, there has to be a due process in order to deport them. Is that
Yeah, that's what Neef was saying.
okay?
And what he's saying is that their excuse, even Neef agrees, their excuse is kind of BS.
Well,
They're
no,
kind of
yeah.
like finding loopholes and like,
I want to like keep these points separated. We're talking about legality, then morality. I agree that it's wrong. Is it illegal? It sounds like yes.
As far as I understand, I mean, now I don't know visa law and stuff, but from what I would imagine, the whole point of having a visa is saying I'm coming in it because you get it to go to other countries too. I'm getting this visa to come or work and go to school or go to school. I'm coming here for a reason that this visa says, and I'm not here to do anything else than that, you know.
But I think sort of the opposing argument would be he was here under false pretenses. His visa was then revoked. and there is a legal due process.
Well,
So
that,
I,
I think
right.
the problem here is none of us actually know, right? Like we don't actually know if
Well,
it's illegal.
that's the thing is, assuming there's a legal process, they went through said process. And that's why they were like, hey, he was associated with these other things. He shouldn't have got his visa. That was their due process. What I think is bullshit is that it shows our system is so not even just corrupt, it's so lazy that if this person, and this is given the benefit of saying everything they're saying is legit. If this dude had affiliations with whatever that would have denied him a visa in the first place, and they did not see these things when he initially applied, but now they've found them, that lets you know that they're not really fucking looking at no shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
They
I
weren't
would
really
also,
doing their job. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, y'all are correct in doing that, but that's some bullshit that y'all going to be like, oh, well, we didn't really worry about these things before. But now since he's speaking out against some shit that we don't like or we like, then now we're going to bring this shit up.
I mean, that kind of just sounds like a flaw with the democracy, though. Because, like, yeah, I think both the shift in administrations is pretty drastic. So one of them didn't really care about that stuff, and one of them's like overly cares about that stuff.
I mean, that makes sense too. You know, it's
So it's sort
like
of like,
when they
but I
got
think
in,
also,
it could have been different people in the administration that just didn't give a shit. One could argue that you had different people working that were of a different mindset, and they didn't care about somebody being affiliated and didn't think that shit was necessary.
and I do think that that's something that's sort of like if you're a foreign country or someone here on a visa or something, like you know what, that is a risk about being in America is it might not be the same administration in 4 years. So you
Yeah,
kind of have to play nice.
I
yeah.
found some more on
I mean,
this.
that's really anywhere though. I mean, you could be in a foreign country and a motherfucker there's a coup and they get overthrown, and next thing you know, I mean, look at fucking
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah, I read what you just read. My counter to that is I don't completely disagree with it, but I would only apply it to foreign policies that are against America.
Is is coming here. Oh, you're saying being pro-Palestine is not anti-America.
Yeah. And there's what they're saying, what Trump is trying to say
Well,
is
that's a good point, isn't it?
because what Trump is trying to say is being anti-Israel is anti-America.
That's a really good point, isn't it? Because the law that's used, I found more on this. The law that was, there was a thing passed in 1990 that basically allows you to deport people for this reason, but it has to be, you said it a second ago, I can't find it again,
Foreign adversaries of like pretty much
foreign adversary. So that would not apply to someone
protesting.
protesting Israel.
Exactly. So for example, I would actually agree with this if like let's say after 9/11 there were people being like, oh, we're pro, Al Qaeda, we're pro Osama bin Laden, then I would understand deporting those people. Because they're like that could be like a menace against your country.
That's a really good point. Being anti-Israel is not being anti-America.
Yeah.
Okay, good point. I mean, after
Yeah,
reading
no,
that, it kind of
that's
does
why?
sound like
Okay, hold on though. Why are you having a protest in America about that?
Because you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can be a student and still protest. Like you can be a student and still have free speech.
So that protest had absolutely nothing to do with disagreeing with the way in which our government was handling the situation. Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, yeah, it would be part of that, but that's still different from like being an adversary of our country. That's different
I
from like
mean,
claiming that our country should like.
if you come here on a visa and protest our recently elected government, that does seem kind of like a little bit adversarial. It's also a bit of a stretch if that's not the main point. But if you're directly protesting our government and you're here on a visa, I think that is is actually fairly reasonable for a country to be like, we're not fitting up with that.
the one caveat to what you said is directly. So it would be indirectly criticizing our government.
Right. But I
But
still think that there's
by
so I think this kind of
extension, it is a protest of this administration.
Right, which I think this kind of goes back to the immigration thing of like part of having certain things in place is as a deterrent. So it's like, okay, if this is allowed, then you have a bunch of people from other countries that want to undermine the US coming here to protest,
Okay,
like
so
explicitly trying to get agents through our visa program
so let me let
to
me let me ask you
protest.
guys. Let me ask you guys.
Thing.
Let's say you had people on visa here in America during Biden's term. Should he have the right to like deport people who are anti like COVID, like the COVID regulations?
We have got to keep this separated between legal and moral. So do you mean, is he within his legal right to, or is it a moral question?
Both. What's your answer to both?
Okay, fair question, but it's gonna have to have two answers, right?
Give me your two answers.
Deporting people because they were talking, what, COVID, something about COVID, you said?
They were against like Biden's COVID regulations.
They were against Biden's COVID regulations. They're from another country here
On a visa.
no, I don't. But I also agree with you that protesting Palestine is not, does not make you a foreign adversary because I disagree with that. Yeah.
And I disagree with that too. I'm pro-Israel and I'm still like against that.
So
I don't want people going against free speech because the more important thing is like we should like be in support of the Constitution and those rights that are given to us, and that's part of that.
I
I
totally
think
agree with you. So
Just
the question
just
is that,
to
sorry,
just to just to chime in, y'all already know where I stand on that. I mean, when it comes to protesting the government, current, prior, future, that's one of the most fundamental things that this country is founded on.
totally agree.
And
It
while
seems
I
like it's
can,
it's
while it
non-constitutional.
right, while it can straight up piss me the hell off to have somebody walk into this country from another country and start dogging it up and down and telling me up and down, you know, I mean, I had it happen the other day on a job. I don't know where the guy was from, but he straight up made a comment. That's what's wrong with you Americans, is y'all always blah blah blah. And it wasn't anything heavy; it was something silly. But the fact is that yeah, I mean, it didn't really piss me off. I'm like, whatever, dude. He ain't the dude I want to hang with. But that's the fundamental, one of the fundamental principles of this country is the fact that you can stand there and do that. And yeah, I didn't like dude saying that, but would I think that he needs to fucking be arrested and even investigated? Did I try to, did I go try to find out if he was legally here to have? No, that's one of the main fundamental things of this country is that we can talk whatever the fuck we want, and it amazes me on both extreme sides of the coin how easily it gets shirked back and forth because right now what you're seeing is the exact opposite. You have the right supporting the government impaling free speech and going after somebody for it, and the left saying, no, that's wrong. They should be able to do it when just a year ago or so, you had the left saying you shouldn't be allowed to say this. You shouldn't be allowed to talk about, during COVID. You had the left saying you can't talk against this. You shouldn't be able to. That should be, while you had a lot of the right saying, no, I should be able to talk what I want.
Yeah.
So,
We should stand
it,
on principle.
So it
yeah,
sounds
it's a
like
complete
three of us are in
political. Yeah.
agreement that it was unconstitutional, illegal, and immoral. Lazy, do you have a contrary opinion?
Yeah, I don't. Uh, actually, I guess I don't fully agree to all three, but especially not that it's unconstitutional or illegal.
Okay.
Um,
Because
because
Do
I
I
don't.
think protesting Palestine
do,
is,
do you think it's unconstitutional, or you think it's constitutional to go after him due to his protest?
I don't think that it is unconstitutional to remove someone from the country. I don't recall there being anything in the Constitution that mentions that.
okay.
What I'm talking about is due to free speech.
Yeah, because of free speech.
of well, not just free speech, but protesting against the government. Do you think that going at it, trying to charge somebody or investigate somebody who is on a visa, who isn't a citizen, who is protesting the government, do you think that is um it's unconstitutional to go against somebody to
I
to
don't
try to
I don't
deport?
think that revoking a visa is a criminal charge. I don't think that that's the
Okay,
same.
so you don't see that as well. That's what I'm saying.
I
I mean,
think
that might
to
not
me
be.
it's like it's
It
like
might.
getting fired from your job for what you said. Like that's not
Right,
unconstitutional.
right. I understand that, but do you think
You
that?
agreed to be here under certain conditions.
Yeah, I
That's
feel you
but
on
your
that.
job doing it is different from the feds doing it.
Now, do you feel that I can understand that on a level of an act? But being on a visa is like a government regulated job. It's like working for the government, if you will. So the government is in essence firing you. It's not like that you talked against the job, so they fired you.
Yeah, it's the feds
This
I mean
doing it,
is
that's
not
I
the job doing it.
so well, let me finish because if you're going by that, then the rules of the government employment is the Constitution. So the government should not really be able to say, "Hey, here's a visa. You can come here and work, but you can't talk. You don't get to
well
have these
okay, but
same rights."
hold on. I think this is one of those things where that sounds good in principle, but you can't actually implement that because the military is a government organization, and they would absolutely fire people for spilling military secrets.
Well, the military is a different thing. You're actually working. You've actually contracted yourself to the government. A visa is saying the government's allowing you time here as a quasi citizen, if you will. You're not a citizen, but you're allowed to be here. Now, granted, there are regulations as to, if you're on a work visa, you have to work while you're here, or you have to maintain whatever job, or if it's a certain job, you can't just switch around, I guess. But does that mean that you have no constitutional rights? Because a constitutional right is to protest the government. So does a work visa differ from citizenship in the way that it is not protected by the Constitution? If you're on a visa, you're not. That's also like saying
I don't
if
think
you're
work visas are protected by the Constitution because I
so.
don't think that revoking a visa is some kind of criminal charge.
Yeah,
All
but
right,
Well, actually, what we just read a minute ago, it it is without when you're on a work visa, it is it unless you're there's a specific act that was invoked when this administration did it, which has to do with if you're a foreign adversary. So
It it
whether
is what?
that's constitutional or not is in this
right.
case it actually is illegal to deport someone with a visa
But
without
oh,
an explanation.
okay, but he wasn't. And I'm I know this is like a technicality thing, but you're saying he was deported with a visa, or his visa was revoked and therefore
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. That is a difference. I don't
Right,
know.
right.
Let me look
No, no,
into
no.
it. Y'all keep
Well,
going.
and that's the default. If your visa gets revoked, you get deported
like
because you can't stay here, you know.
yeah.
And that's the whole thing. And that's an interesting one that
And that's
works
what
out
I'm
because
saying. I don't know what
as
the
a,
exact law is, but I don't see what is unconstitutional about revoking a work visa for
all
any
right,
reason, because I
You're
don't view it
you're
as a
saying
criminal
right,
whether or
charge.
not it's legal, it's definitely not unconstitutional, is what you're saying.
right.
Yeah, because I don't. You're given a temporary privilege, and that privilege is being
Well,
revoked as
what I'm talking about is saying that what that is saying is that the Constitution is only for citizens of the U.S.
no,
now.
no, because I don't think that they could press criminal charges on him for doing that.
The Constitution doesn't necessarily have to do with criminal charges. It has to do with rights.
So according to
It's not
this,
about Bill of Rights.
the bill lets the Secretary of State um, block deport someone he or she thinks would create a serious adverse foreign policy consequence.
Right. Which makes it legal. The question is that because that questions whether that law, no, not that law is fully
That's so
constitutional.
fucking vague that you could definitely make an argument for why that's
Because what I'm saying is if the Constitution grants or doesn't grant rights, it recognizes human rights, not citizens' rights.
Human rights.
It recognizes human rights as they are. And one of those human rights is being able to redress your government. Then it is unconstitutional to bring up any violation to someone for regressing their government. If you're revoking their visa, that is you're giving them a citation or you're violating them in some way. You know what I'm saying? It's a charge, if you will.
So what we found out today is the laws on it are actually super fucking vague. So whether or not this is illegal or not is going to rule down to a court, because it's really fucking vague and it's just going to be a court ruling. So it's hard for us to say because the laws are so fucking stupid and vague whether or not this was illegal.
That's where you get into where some judges do some things, some judges don't.
But can we agree that at least morally it does feel like it's against the Constitution?
Is
I
it
believe it completely is.
unconstitutional? I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's unconstitutional because it's freedom of speech, you know.
What you think about that, Lazy?
Not the legality or technicality or whatever, but just the morality of it.
Not just non-constitutional, because as we've already addressed, there's nothing in the Constitution about this, but does it violate the Constitution? Final answer.
No, I don't. I still don't see how it violates the Constitution.
I won't even say full
He doesn't want to
Constitution.
grant free speech to them. That's why.
Yeah, I just say the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment. It's a violation of the First Amendment.
And you're saying those rights don't apply to people, only Americans, even if it's
No, that's not what I said.
No,
right,
that's the thing is Lazy has made that clear that that's not what he's saying. That
okay,
he
my bad.
agrees that it is. That's where I'm confused on it because
I don't.
I understand what you're saying about visas not being in the Constitution. If you take this away from being a visa and you apply it to an illegal, all right, it goes back to the same thing. If there's a dude standing there regressing the government and he's an illegal, he shouldn't be run up on charges because he's redressing the government. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's not how they should find out that he's an illegal. You see what I'm saying?
YouTube where he was like being anti-Israel. Should the government then therefore stop him from doing that and then be like, are you illegal or not? Find out, oh, you're illegal. We're going to take you away now. So what he's saying is he's defending them getting rid of his freedom of speech by saying, oh, because he's illegal, that's the crime that they can take him away. But what me and Lazy are saying is that the thing that the crime the thing we're against is that first part, like stopping him from doing that, and like what's inciting them to do that to begin with. You see what I'm saying? Like
a due process argument?
No, not even due process. Like, okay, so make a YouTube channel where he like talks about being anti-Israel.
Yeah, again, there's like a moral and a legal answer and a constitutional answer.
Well, according to
not the deporting part, just that part. Should he have?
Yeah.
Constitutionally speaking,
that's not even an America thing. That's a YouTube thing, right?
Well, what I'm saying is, YouTube is a private company, so that's not. We have to step out of that. What you're basically saying is, he be allowed to walk outside
like a soapbox
on the public street and get on a soapbox and talk shit on the government?
Absolutely.
Now, what I'm talking about is for the government to use that as a flag to divert resources into investigating that person to find out they're illegal. That's where we run into the problem because now it's like, I understand okay, we got a bunch of people in the country that aren't documented that are criminals, which is a very dangerous thing because now they're able to get away with more shit than they could if they were documented. That's just known. And if they're a criminal and they're doing shit, they're gonna keep doing shit. All right.
Well, then
So
there's other issues with
if
immigration in
well
other parts of the world. You look at what's happening in Europe
if
right now.
if
That's
you're looking for people who are committing crimes as such, and you find them and they're illegals and you deport them, that's one thing. If you're running around doing that, but then some dude over here just starts blasting on the government and you decide to say, hey, wait a minute, let's look over at him for a second. Oh, let's investigate. Oh, this dude, oh, he happens to not be completely legit here. Let's get him gone. Yes, it's illegal for them to do that. It's very unconstitutional because it's probably they wouldn't call it unconstitutional because they're not invading on his free speech. They're just using that as a avenue to
Like
a
they're using
reason to
loopholes
go.
to
Well,
get
they're
away with freedom of
basically
speech.
it's basically not even that. They're
immoral for
just
sure.
yeah, they're basically just using that for a reason. Whereas if he was up there saying, "You guys are doing a great job, get rid of those illegals," while he was illegal, they'd never look at him. You know what I'm saying? And the point being is, it's like, all right, where I'm coming from is while I don't give a shit about people breaking victimless crime laws, and if somebody jumps the border and gets here, that's cool if it ain't fucking with me and my fam. If there's some nutball that comes from any other fucking place that's running up and down my street, I want him handled. You know, I
Well,
want that motherfucker handled first. I'm not worried about the dude that snuck in and is down here bitching about the government. You know, and that's
well,
where I'm coming from. It's unconstitutional. I think it's immoral, which is an opinion, but they make these things legal.
okay, I see what you're saying. So when we talk about legality, it's like the laws are weird and are not going to match up with morals, and they're not going to match up with the Constitution. So we can put illegal aside when it comes to this specific case. I don't think we're going to find a good resolution here on legality, because of the way it sounds like even our government doesn't really know what the laws are exactly because they're
Or
so
they use
poorly written.
loopholes. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
poorly written, so they use loopholes.
yeah. Um, so it comes back to whether it, and we said we would all find an area of middle ground.
Yeah,
So,
the lazy's the only one who won't.
God damn it, Leslie,
I mean,
you
I
son of a
understand.
bitch.
I
You
understand
asked
what
me
Lazy's saying.
what I'm disagreeing with here, and then you all talked for like 20 minutes.
I'm
So do you
sorry.
want
No, I do understand what you're saying, Lazy, about it not being unconstitutional because it's not technically, they're not stopping their freedom of speech. They're just finding out they're illegal and yanking them the fuck out. They're not throwing them out for their speech necessarily.
Yeah,
They're
which
throwing
I
them
think
out because they yanked their visa and their visa's getting yanked because of their speech.
But that just seems like a loophole. Like it just seems wrong. Like
Well,
okay,
yeah. Yeah.
no, but hold on though.
Okay, go ahead.
If you get into, I don't know the legality of the visa thing, but I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that talks about a visa. And the reason I think this is important is because I don't know that revoking a visa is necessarily a charge. They might not need any reason to do that. They might just say, "Hey, actually, I decided I don't want you to have a visa," and you're good.
That's
You're
that's
gone.
all. Okay. All
Which
right.
means
That's
it's
what
not
yeah.
unconstitutional
open
to
to
do that.
Right, right. No, I feel you there. I feel you there. It has to do with,
You can still disagree with it, but in terms of whether what if the Constitution protects that or not, I don't think it
right.
does.
No, no, no. I feel you there. No, and that's what I was saying. I get what you're saying.
That
I feel,
doesn't
yeah,
mean they're not wrong for doing it, but
right,
I don't think it's a
right.
constitutional issue.
No, I feel you. I feel you. It might, if it is, it's not necessary. It's only a constitutional issue that they were where I'm coming
Well,
from
the
as far as them
question,
going after the protest.
Neef made a good point earlier. There's a difference between non-constitutional and unconstitutional. So the question, like, there's nothing in here about the Constitution, about visas in the Constitution, but does it violate constitutional rights? Is it in opposition to what is written there? And you're saying it doesn't have any bearing on it at all, so no. Is that
Yeah, I'm saying it doesn't. I don't think it has any bearing on it because the actual argument would be whether or not they're allowed to revoke a visa.
Right. Right. That's the thing is we don't know enough about visa law.
okay? I see.
You know, that's
Right.
basically what Lazy's saying. He's saying it very much on a technical side, not necessarily a moral or a argument on what he believes is right or wrong about it, but
Yeah, but we wanted to answer
technically
that part though,
speaking.
the
And then
moral part.
and then on the legal side, what I'm saying is I don't know, so I can't agree that it's illegal.
But what about moral?
And that's okay. So we've kind of hit ahead where we don't have enough information, both constitutionally, according
I
to
think we have I think we have enough information constitutionally, which is that the Constitution doesn't say
It
anything
doesn't
about.
specifically apply to that. In this in particular situation, what I'm saying is the fact that they went after the person because they were speaking out means that if
Is okay, so
whether
I
or
would
not
also
whether or
like
not
to
it's a
ask,
law
is
with a
that the
visa,
reason given from them? That is their own
Yeah,
statement.
that is the he read it.
yeah,
That is the reason.
yeah, their
The
reasoning,
White House statement.
You read the statement again.
it
Well,
had to
who's
do
the
with
this
statement
is from
from?
the White House, but let me see.
it's a DOJ. It's basically saying if they're a combatant or not a combatant, but if they're possibly, in other words, possibly part of an enemy country and here to um
The whole of war and whatever.
right.
Here, you look. I gotta keep.
Basically, like if we're in the middle of a war and with Russia and there's Russians here that are on visas, they can't be running around being pro-Russia and anti-American because we're in the middle of a war with them. I think is what they're saying.
And that was their statement for why for
And
revoking this
that's what the
visa?
law that they had written in or the act that's been put in that grants them the right to revoke the visa is saying that if the person
Well,
is
wait, back up. I thought you said that that is what allows them to deport someone who has a visa. But you can have a visa revoked
what I'm
for
saying is,
multiple reasons.
yeah, the visa gets revoked, so you by default you get deported because you can't be here without a visa. You
Fine.
know, you're
I
not a
know for a
citizen.
fact you can have your visa revoked for other reasons than that.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying is you can. That's what we don't know is, but what they're saying is they revoked the visa because they
Is that what they
violated.
said?
Yeah, that's what he was saying. They violated some act, and that act was put in saying that it gave
Well, I heard them read the
whoever.
law. I didn't hear them read a statement about why this specific case.
Well, he's got to pull it back up, I guess, because
Yeah, I'll look it up.
yeah, it basically I can't remember how it was worded, and it was really kind of weird. It was about um countries that we might be in conflict with or some shit like that, which I don't think applies in this situation because they were speaking out against Israel, and we're not fucking Israel. You know, regardless if they're in the middle of war, it's kind of like speaking out against Ukraine or Russia. You know, you speak out against Ukraine just because Biden's dumping money to them doesn't mean that we're not in a war with them. So, and I still think that's unconstitutional because you should be able to speak out against the government at any, you should be able to say any fucking thing, really. Which is why I think if that's an act that was put in to give them the power to revoke visas, then that is an unconstitutional act, which we see a lot of that shit happen. So it makes it unconstitutional but legal.
Did we find a White House statement?
Find it,
Okay.
I bet you had read
Um,
something, Alex.
let
Alex, you're not really on camera fully. You know that?
says here,
Mhm.
The Trump
Oh,
administration has cited a 1952 law that empowers the government to order someone deported if their presence in the country could pose unfavorable consequences for American foreign policy. The judge said that Trump administration was allowed to move forward with its efforts to deport Mr. Khalil because the argument that he poses adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. is facially reasonable.
So he was directly using that law.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's not illegal. I think we're all on the same page there because the laws are fucking stupid. But then we got onto Constitution. I do understand
Because I would still
Lazy's
go
argument.
because I would still go against that. I would still say that does not being anti-Israel does not count as like.
Oh, but it's so vague though that it's going to come down to a court ruling. So the judge, basically, the laws are so stupid. The judge ruled it was. That means it's legal.
Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
sounds like just legal
Yeah.
nonsense. I mean, not
Yeah.
like just our legal system is kind of nonsense with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind
But
of
yeah, that's
it's just really vague and stupid. So you
But
could make an
I
argument
think,
for
yeah,
it being both
I
legal
think
and
that act,
illegal with how that law is worded. It's going to come down to how it's ruled in court. So I
I
don't
think that,
think
yeah,
it's illegal exactly just because our legal system is what it is.
But it feels wrong, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's get on to morality then. We kind of hit a stalemate. Like we're not going to get any further on constitution, I don't think. So, Lazy, what's your
I,
stance on it
yeah.
morally?
uh morally, I think it's wrong.
Okay. All right.
And I think unless if they can actually show in a court that it somehow a danger to the U.S., then I don't think it is wrong. If they can actually show that they're not just being full of shit. But if you're talking about just somebody protesting, I don't morally agree with.
I
We
think
need to
that the act,
demonstrate whether or not this is a reasonable threat to America, basically.
Yeah, like if they can actually demonstrate that, then I don't disagree with it morally.
Okay, so
that's,
we did find
yeah,
some common ground on the subject, which it was immoral to deport that person for protesting Israel.
Yeah, because I'm not even completely opposed to this law. Like Lazy was saying, no, not Lazy. Like you were saying, Neef, if like Russia was in an actual war with America, I wouldn't want people here being like pro-Russia. If you were like an active war with them, like
that's what that act is supposed to be
that was the
about.
intention. That was the intention.
And that's why it's 1950 something. That was definitely an anti,
Actually,
you
that one
know,
was
that was,
1990. That one
I
was
thought it,
1990.
I thought it said there's some 1950 act that gave them.
1952 was when work visas were introduced. That's what I read earlier.
Oh, that's probably
Oh,
why.
okay.
Oh, but this one still cited that one. It cited the adverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the specific law that you can deport someone with a work visa if they pose a credible threat,
That was 990.
that was 1990.
Yeah, and then 1952.
90.
They're pretty much using the combination of both.
Yeah, and
1952
that's,
is the whole visa thing, and then this is like the reason we're revoking it.
Okay,
I think their application of that law in this case was unconstitutional because
so
it was based on a protest.
I agree with
I
you. I also understand what Lazy's saying.
I have a
Right.
question for David and Neve, which is, given the Russian example, that would be legal, but do you guys think that would be unconstitutional? Right?
I
To
do.
deport.
I do. I
I
don't
think,
think you
I
should
think it
deport
is.
someone because they're pro-Russia in America. I think that's
Yeah,
unconstitutional.
it has to
No,
do
no, but
with,
in our example, we're at war with Russia.
I don't care.
it also has to do with action. If somebody is just speaking, I don't think that's ever a thing.
Oh,
If
sure.
somebody
It's
is
a totally different thing
actively,
if you're acting out. Yeah.
But
but
what if they're
then you get
saying, hey,
into,
all Russians in the United States should?
Let's say
Something
you're
called to action
protesting
that's
enough
different.
to get the attention of the government.
I mean, what is that? You know,
I mean, this is like a national news story. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure it was pretty
you
effective.
know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. What is it effective to do? You know, are they worried that somebody is going to sway the country to, surrender in the middle of a war?
They're worried that people might not be on board with what Israel is doing to Palestine.
Right. Well, I mean, we've got people back and forth all over the place, but that's part of what the First Amendment's about.
But that's why Trump did it, is because it's going to create an anti-Israel sentiment that already exists. So it's not
Well,
creating, it's just,
The
okay, but here,
government should be in fear of what the people have to say, not
yeah,
the other way
goddamn
around.
right they should.
okay, but I'm gonna say on a moral level, on a personal level, I don't want Israeli agents coming to the U.S. and protesting in favor of Israel to try to sway people to get support for Israel either.
I
I
mean,
would want them to be deported and their visas revoked for doing that.
I don't think
Because I
that
think that's a discussion between Americans about what direction they want their
Well,
government.
I think
that's a
that comes
moral
down,
argument you made, not a constitutional one.
and I think
It's
that
like,
well, I think that also comes down to visa law, like you were talking about.
Right.
If
If
I don't want I don't want somebody coming over on the pretense that they're going to school only to be, trying to pull some shit because they're
yeah,
coming in on our resources. Same way with working. I don't want somebody coming in on a work visa when they're planning on sabotaging some shit. But that's pretty much nobody wants that from anything, and
I might be the
what's
odd one out here where,
they still have to commit a crime to actually do something. That's what I'm saying is somebody's here on a work visa. It's really weird that there's an extra set of laws. You know what I'm saying? That they
I
have to
disagree
adhere
with
to.
that. I
If
disagree with that
you
because
know,
it's not an extra set of laws. It's conditions for them to continue to have their visa. So it's
right.
like if you stop going to school, you're going to lose
Well,
your visa and
right.
get deported.
I
That's not an
understand.
extra law.
Well,
There's no law
but
saying that people who don't go to school in the
what
U.S.
I'm
get
saying,
punished.
right? That's not a law. But what it is a law is that you can't go and regress your government because that overcuts a constitutional right.
It's well, first of all, it's not their government if they're here on a visa.
Well, if you go beyond that, that's basically saying you can't step out and say whatever you want. You're not afforded the same human rights as other people in this country. And that's when it gets back to the idea is the Constitution
I
for
I
citizens
don't
only.
think that they're afforded. I don't think that foreigners are afforded the same rights as citizens. One of those rights being the right to be in the country. You don't have a right to be here if you're not an American.
Well, that's not in the Constitution.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that aren't in the Constitution.
So it doesn't recognize a right to be here. That's kind of an interesting philosophy behind that.
Well, the Constitution also says that it doesn't recognize every right that somebody has.
Right,
If you want to really argue into that,
right. So basically,
that's interesting. I
but
didn't know.
I'm
yeah.
but I'm saying like you're talking about like what is and isn't constitutional. It's like a lot of this stuff isn't actually addressed, but in practice, like how would this actually work?
Um,
Well, in
what?
practice, I think me and Neef can agree on something in practice. If if they actually commit an actual crime, then we're pro them being deported. That should be like the line, not their speech.
I mean, how about this for if you guys want to do some kind of agreement? How about no visas? Because then we don't have to deal with this issue.
I mean, well, then that gets back to where I'm not really about government or borders, because visas are just another government regulation, just like a citizenship is, you know,
But I'm like,
People
this
take
seems
that
like
all the way.
I'll take it all the way too.
you know, but that's when we get into tundra law and, you know,
I mean,
everybody
Wow,
like,
starts
wow, the
getting
globalists and the anarchists agreeing about something.
global anarchy,
Global
yeah.
anarchy.
global
Remember, you have to take into account. I
constitutional
want
anarchism.
globalism because I want the most freedom, not the other way around.
Yeah, I understand your stance on that. I don't. It is the most compelling argument I've heard. I'll say that for that side. So I want to try and keep it on topic. I think we've pretty much exhausted. I guess
Wait,
before we
so
move on, go ahead, Lazy. Yeah.
I want to say one last thing. So, because the Constitution doesn't say anything about a right to be here, is the government free to deport everyone, even U.S. citizens, if they feel like it? That wouldn't be
Well,
unconstitutional. I mean, it wouldn't be unconstitutional, right?
Well, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, not here specifically, though.
Well, liberty is supposed to be the idea of that. Well, that's the thing is the government doesn't have the right to. You have the right to not be seized, and in order to deport you, you have to be seized. They have to they have to break your right. You have to lose your right for what is that? Fourth Amendment.
So it would be fine though then for them to, if you leave the country, not allow you back in.
Um, that's why when you come, well, there's a lot of videos of people coming back in from the Mexican border that refuse to answer questions at Border Patrol because as a citizen, you're not supposed to have to stop. So when they stop you and they start asking you, are you a citizen? A lot of these guys are like, are you done? I don't have anything to say. And they're like, you need to let me know if you're a citizen and if you're carrying anything. And they're like, if I am, I have the right to travel unimpeded.
Wow. Wow, that
It's
just goes to
insane.
show
And
how like
there's dudes that get away with it, and there's dudes that get yanked out of their fucking trucks.
that just goes to show that's like that's how legality works in this country is
Yep.
going to come down to a bunch of wishy-washy, depends on the person enacting or
Yep. Constitutionalists are
enforcing
fucking
those
motherfuckers
laws. Yeah,
because when
what
you're
a shit
crossing
show.
certain borders, even going from I think Cali into Nevada, there's a spot where they worry about kind of like coming out of Florida. If you have certain plants like key limes, stuff like that, you can't bring them out of Florida because of it's kind of like bringing foreign plants in. It's dangerous too for the ecology, and they worry about that. Now, how much of that has to do with them trying to control crop, and how much of it is legit, like kudzu? You know, people bringing shit like kudzu in.
And
So
also, what I'm
those are
really thinking
environmental
about in
laws.
this conversation is these laws are vague on purpose. That way, you can enact them when you want to, and
Yep,
ignore them when it's
and and a
convenient.
and a and a judge can decipher them depending on what state he works in.
Yeah.
Like an example of using it when you want and when you don't is Trump is actually bringing in people by plane from South Africa, specifically white South Africans. I don't know if that has anything to do with Musk, but
You mean illegally?
Specifically, white South Africans.
yeah, no, I mean legally, but that's the point. That he's the one who decides what counts or doesn't. So he's fine with that with white people from South Africa.
Which what people?
Sounds like the only qualification as long as they're white.
Yeah, I'm wondering what like site are they like coming in to do something specifically for him?
Yeah,
No,
what's
so
the
the
reasoning
reason,
behind that?
I mean, it's not like he's going to state the real reason.
Okay.
No, I'm just
You think it
curious the
is racially
context of it.
motivated?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just curious the context of him specifically bringing people in.
I'm pretty. I'm not. I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure the excuse they're using is they're in danger, so they're fleeing South Africa because they're in
Oh,
danger of
he's
black people.
bringing. So they're saying they're refugees, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean
Okay,
that's
so they have refugee status. They're allowed in.
now you are aware that there is racial tension in parts of Africa, and there are white people who have been having to flee for many years now because the predominant non-white governments are coming in saying, "No, we're taking your shit because you're
Yeah.
white."
No, I agree with you, but I'm
No, no,
answering.
no, no. I'm just asking you if you know about
No,
that. That's been happening.
I know
That's
about
been
it.
happening. So that might be
But
what that.
my point is, if you're, I know about all that, but my point is, if you're anti-refugee, you should just be anti-refugee. Period. Because
Oh, right,
a lot of Republicans would be anti-refugee if they were like coming from the Middle East, for example.
Well, I'm pretty sure refugee
right,
status only applies to bordering countries. So the only
right,
people that
right.
can come here on
yeah.
refugee status are Canadians and Mexicans.
But these guys are
Yeah, see, that's what I'm
going in.
saying. I don't know enough about that in particular. And yeah, the whole refugee status thing is it's murky and it's always, we
My
never hear.
understanding of refugee status is that's something you do as allies that you like have to do. Like
Right.
you're
Yeah.
beholden to do
Yeah.
that
Yeah. You have to do it as a
with
bordering country.
allying bordering countries.
But also, I think that is like either like Geneva Convention or NATO or some shit because that's not, you know what I mean? That's like world law.
Yeah, so David
That's
just
why
pulled up an
Poland got,
article
that's
from
why I got
Reuters.
Poland.
The
Yeah.
headline is First White South Africans Board Plane for US Under Trump Refugee Plan. So that's not, just don't call it refugees, just call it a humanitarian effort.
Oh, okay. Some refugee plan. Well, we'd have to look at the plan and see what the plan says.
But what I'm saying is, in principle, I'm anti-refugees that are just from like across the world, period. And I feel like a lot of people on the Republican side have that same idea, but they should also be against this on principle.
I totally agree.
They shouldn't be okay with
Yeah.
it just because Trump is saying it's okay and because they're
Be
white.
consistent.
Yeah, be consistent.
Yeah.
What I will say that I've heard people talk about refugees in a number of different ways. So I think uh, being that reductive about it and then telling people they need to be consistent is kind of disingenuous too. Like you don't know what people's problem with certain refugees was or wasn't. To say like, oh, you have to be fully for or against refugees. Like
Saying there's
like
multiple, there's like multiple definitions basically. People talk about it.
well, so like one of the things that I heard people saying they have a problem with is that some people were claiming that illegal immigrants are here as refugees because their country sucks.
Okay, that's not
Right.
you have to
Refugees
be
supposed
at
to be.
war with another
Yeah.
country. It can't be a drug war. It has to be another. Your country is
I,
at war,
I don't
and it also has
I,
to border the country that you're fleeing to. That's how refugee status works.
Yeah.
so I don't think it's inconsistent. You can disagree with it, but I don't think it's inconsistent for someone to say they don't think we can take refugees from a country just because the country is like poor or not as nice as our country. However, they are willing to take refugees from a country even if they're not at war, if those people are actually in danger of being killed by their own government.
I think it's okay to
That's,
do that, but it's not a refugee status, right?
well, I'm saying
Oh,
I don't think this is a be consistent issue unless you get into why they are okay with one or the other.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because what I'm saying is I'm against any of them regardless, even if they're
Right. So I'm saying if for you to be consistent, then you would have to keep being against any of them regardless. I'm saying I don't necessarily know that that's what other people why they are or aren't against them. I don't know that other people are making a blanket statement.
Oh, you're saying that like motive is being ascribed, but that's kind of an
Right.
assumption. Okay.
I'm saying like if you say, well, I have a blanket statement and I'm being consistent. It's like, well, their statement might not have been a blanket thing. They might have specifically had an issue with a certain group of refugees.
Okay.
So it's not inconsistent for them to be okay with a different group if they
And
have a different reason.
And to David's point, it's not like he would state the real reason. He would give a reason, but that so
and even people who are pro-Trump would still not give the real reason.
so Lazy's saying we should look at the stated reason. You're saying that it's kind of irrelevant because they're not going to be honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, when is a politician honest?
I think both things are true. They're going to lie, and also you should listen to what they have to say, right?
Well, but I would also say, even if you're lying, that doesn't necessarily mean you're inconsistent.
yeah. As
Good point.
If you want to start,
You can be a consistent liar. Yeah.
as the Slayer song says, you have to read between the lies.
Yeah.
And the idea is when it comes to stuff like that, it's like I understand where David's coming from because it is very much a kind of you know, if we're playing by the rules of what we're doing in this country, then we very much need to be much more nationally interested. You know what I'm saying? It's like humanitarian effort is great around the world, but there's no way that you can lead humanitarian change across the globe when you have just a shitstorm going back home, you know? And I'm kind of with him on the whole idea of I'm not worried about everybody else around here until I can walk down the street and not see worsening suffrage going on. You know,
Yeah.
it'd be different if I didn't watch things progressively get worse on the streets in the last 20 years. You know what I'm saying?
That's like a nationalist argument. Yeah.
And it's very, and it's not even, and
Like
I
an
don't even
America
come from,
first kind of thing.
right. And it's not even me coming from a nationalist place. It's more of like, because it is our funds or our tax dollars, supposedly.
No, the people that run this country should put America first. I agree with you. That's
Absolutely.
what we hired them to do.
And
Yeah.
that's what we hired specifically Trump to do, which is he's
Right.
not doing that with this specific.
Right. And that's why I'm like, I'm kind of with you on this. Like, and I give a fuck where they're from or what color they are. It's very much what's going on back here. I'm not even worried about his reasoning behind these things. Everything's got some political or socio-political or signaling motivation behind it when it comes to politics. So you know,
It's
yay, great, you're helping people. I can't say that I give that much a fuck until I see a lot more getting helped here. Not that I'm, you know, entirely upset with what's going on here now. I am more optimistic about local change, but obviously things like that don't support the optimism, but at the same time, it doesn't shock me.
I'm trying to keep this thing on the rails. Do we have anything else to talk about in regards to immigration? Does anyone else have anything to say? We were able to arrive on morality on this specific case of the pro-Palestine protester. That's about the only common ground we've all arrived to is the morality about that specific issue. Lazy, did I cut you off? Were you about to say something?
No, you're good.
Okay. So if we're ready, we'll move on to police, which was our next topic, which I already know where Neef stands on this. You're muted.
What's the next topic?
Police.
Police?
Police.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Ever heard of them?
Holy.
Hold on. I got to listen to some NWA real quick.
Yeah. Alice is already fully aware of what Neef and I think about police. So I think specifically we were talking, fuck. There was something specific about police we were going to talk about.
You mean the band? Like
Yeah, the
Sting,
band. Yeah,
Stuart
let's talk about
Copeland?
the band, the police. Lazy, what do you think about the band Police?
I like that band. I've listened to some of their songs. I like them. I think they're pretty good.
They got that one video, the claymation one, or was it a puppet or something?
Actually, I haven't listened to them forever. You remind me of them. Makes me like, I should listen to them.
Yeah.
Typically when I think about a song that somebody did, I'm not thinking about the video. Um, they
But
have
that
several.
doesn't change the fact that they do have that video.
I'm not aware or familiar or remembering. I'm just thinking about the songs I know.
David, what do you think about the band The Police?
I think they're okay.
Yeah.
Message in
I
a
agree.
bottle.
In the video where they've got like the puppet, you know what I'm talking about?
Roxanne.
Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of a different band. That's Sting, right?
Well, Sting sang for the Police and played bass, but then he went
Oh, I'm
solo.
thinking of a different band. I don't even know what I'm thinking of at this point.
Sting also played in the original or the first in David Lynch's Dune.
Yeah, I knew that. What am I
He's
thinking
in some,
of?
he's in
I
some
thought it
other
was the
stuff
Police.
too.
Well, anyway, do you remember what it was specifically we were going to talk about when it comes to police?
Okay, we'll do this one a little different from the last one. So for this one, what we're gonna do is we're in charge and we're gonna make like a hypothetical like police force. Like what in what way do you think you could improve the police?
Oh, okay. That's really fun, actually. In
Yeah,
what way could the police be better than they currently are? It's
yeah,
kind of,
because we could all be coming from different directions.
oh, I like this. Does someone else want to start?
I mean,
That's how I start.
we can't start with me because what do you want to just get rid of them or like
Okay, I'll
Um,
start.
Go
I'll be the
ahead.
chief.
Go ahead, Lazy.
All right. I think that it needs to be seen as a much more serious job. So I think like more training, more funding,
hey,
like
that's
a
me.
lot higher requirements. Like this is something you got to go to school for. Maybe not quite as much as like a doctor, but like a similar thing where it's like this is a big commitment and you get paid really well for it.
With equal or higher penalties for crime. Yes,
Uh,
yes, no.
yeah, well, I think if you did that, um, actually much like a medical degree, you're so heavily invested in that position that even having that revoked from you is a huge penalty. Because like you
Okay,
can't just go get another job.
you've
Kind of
invested a
screwed.
lot of time and effort into this. You're saying you
Yeah,
don't necessarily need another incentive besides having your, like, I guess, license revoked.
right. Because like I think to me that would be similar to like a doctor where it's like they've invested so much time and money into becoming a doctor that any kind of medical malpractice that could get their license revoked is like life ruining to them.
That's an interesting perspective I hadn't considered. Because
The
my
equi-
stance on
well,
it was,
the equivalent of what y'all are talking about is called qualified immunity, but we'll get into that.
yeah. So I think I agree with you. I didn't consider that part of it. Um,
I I want to clear that I'm not saying like I'm against penalties. I'm just saying I think that that would solve a lot of it without necessarily having to add that on in addition. But I'm not
yeah,
against that either.
you're saying if the incentive was there to do well and it was really high qualifications, you may not necessarily need equal deterrence.
Yeah,
Not
but I'm not against
necessarily.
that either. I'm just saying I'm
Okay,
not necessarily.
Yeah,
sure.
because me and Alex already had this conversation on phone a while ago, and I pretty much said the same thing you did, except I called them like super cops, where like I feel like they should have the same respect as like a lawyer or like a doctor or whatever. But that also includes like the same qualifications. Like we just have too many like stupid cops out there right now.
My main thing I would add to this, and I think we're all going to be in pretty much agreement about this, but what I'll add to that is there the only say something were to happen like unnecessary force. Um, Not only should the officer involved face consequences, but so should the police chief and the person that hired them. Right. So it's like now you have an incentive on the boss to like keep your troopers in line because it's your neck too. Right.
Yeah.
So I think harsher penalties in at least that way, where this affects more than just the officer directly involved. It affects the whole department. So I think that way, what that does is it incentivizes them to police each other, where they're like the chief's like, no, motherfucker, you fucked up. I do not have your back on this. That's my ass. It's like, you know, so I think that's we're all pretty much in agreement about this thing.
I mean, yeah.
Well,
Um,
Well, it's
maybe.
for me.
I actually want to chime in about what you said, Alex, because you've mentioned this before, and I've been thinking about it. I was thinking that that sounds good, but I'm concerned that it might actually have the opposite effect, which is that because it could come back on the chief, that they're more likely to cover things up. That it becomes like more of a brotherhood of like covering for each other.
We need in that case, we need a department that is just police audits. But then you're asking the government to audit itself, which is like that's a problem too. That's where we get into Doge and shit like that.
let me know when y'all are, ready for me
Go
to
ahead,
start
Neef. I gotta pee.
start
Go ahead.
cooking. Let me
Get ready for this.
so first and foremost, in order to deal with policing, we have to back up from policing and understand police as what they are. It's law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement is the root of what they do. All right. We have to get rid of victimless crime. If the police were only interested in solving aggravated crime, you know, I don't got to run through the list. Um, as far as law enforcement, then right there you trim down the need. All right. And the problem with there's a couple of problems with pay because when you make something high paying, it gives people the incentive to the wrong incentive to do it. Um, I very much believe that if we are going to have a minimum wage, that every government official should not get paid any more than that, whether it be the federal or a street cop, because you're given a position of office. So you are not a citizen when you are working what is called under the color of law. You have extra privileges, which a lot of the things that y'all were talking about already exist. They're just corrupt as fuck. There's an agency that just polices the police. They're called
Yeah.
internal affairs.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you
like an
have
HR department for a business is not going to rule against the company they work for.
now
Just individual.
you have corrupt systems and corrupt departments that work on qualified immunity. So when an officer commits a crime or is negligent and causes himself to commit a crime, they can be exonerated from it and not held liable for civil damages or criminal damages. So you can't sue them for accidentally shooting your fucking grandma, right? And not only can you not sue them, the dude that did it doesn't get charged for fucking murder because, oh, he was on the job and, whatever, this and that. So the problem being is why was he in a position where he had to draw down on your grandma in the first place? A traffic stop, um, serving some bullshit paperwork, walked up, pulled up on you when you were walking her down the street to check IDs. You know what I mean? To make sure you weren't whatever the fuck,
Same issue with
because
just walking up on someone because you
some,
suspect they
cause
might be
some,
illegal.
yeah, because some fucking Karen called and said that she didn't recognize y'all walking down a public street, you know, and didn't get told by dispatch. It don't matter, bitch. If they're not doing nothing, shut the fuck up. They're on a public street. Oh, okay. We'll send somebody right over because we want to generate revenue.
Yeah, because
They have to do things. Also, the federal government hands money to departments who have higher crime. So if they run around and find a bunch of bullshit misdemeanors, they report a higher crime rate. The federal government grants them more money to combat the crime, even though it's a bunch of misdemeanors and a bunch of,
And then crime gets worse.
and then the crime gets worse.
because one thing I also talked to you about with my idea of super cops is that they only apply to actual you know like violent situations.
Super troopers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because, for example, how would you feel about this, Nate? Two versions of cops. There's the super cops that are paid well, like the type of thing me and Lazy are talking about. These cops are armed and they only go to like actual situations. Like there's an active shooting, this place is getting robbed, whatever,
Kind
whatever.
of like SWAT.
Kind of like SWAT, yeah. But then you have another cop, which is like a lower cop, like more of a traffic cop, but these cops aren't allowed to carry guns. And in fact, they can't really even do arrests. Their job is just to do all the small, like, oh, here's your ticket for this because you parked in the wrong place, etc., or whatever. But with having these people around, you never feel the danger of like, oh, this guy could like kill me any second if I do like the wrong thing.
What's the point of them? The police victimless crime.
Well, once again, there is kind of a what you're describing exists, but it exists imperfectly because
Kind of like that, huh? Where
Yeah,
it's like,
if
except that they're armed.
yeah.
if traffic
You
cops
get rid of somebody you get rid of some of the problems if they're not armed.
right, if traffic cops strictly look for traffic violations,
Yeah. Yeah.
it wouldn't be as much of a problem. Having them unarmed is technically unconstitutional. And to even have them, they'd have to be armed. Now, the problem is, I'm all about everybody being able to tote. So, why would you even have any kind of enforcement that wasn't armed? Because people doing real crime definitely are going to be armed.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but that's
You
why you
know,
have the super cops work.
The problem is not
now,
the cops being armed.
well,
People
and
not.
see, that's what I'm saying. I understand when it comes to traffic situations, and that is a really weird area. And that I think comes down to if you have to do these things, it gets back into lowering the amount of crimes available
Mm.
and lowering the incentive to generate revenue.
Oh, that's a good point. This let me break in real quick. That's like
Yeah.
an education argument, right? Is like why prevent this when we could put more money into institutions where people are just not going to pursue crime in the first place? Like instead of deterrence, like you could prevent this in other ways, like better education, better I guess social systems.
I mean, that's kind of supposed to be the idea, but
I mean, that's asking the government to do their job, which is
well, that's when you get into government employment, so it's like it's it's a good point that was made. I can't remember what movie, but they're talking about years and years ago. I was watching some sci-fi or something, I think, and they're talking about the ship being built. It was a government thing, and so it was the lowest bidder.
well, that's our
And
roads in Tennessee, right?
well, that's government efficiency in general. The government is supposed to not spend too much money because we're on their ass and we're not supposed to be wasting our money. The problem is, and this is a major thing that happens in healthcare, or excuse me, in the medical field and the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry, that big trilateral, um, is your when you have I'm sorry, I just slipped off what I was saying.
We can come back to it.
Yeah, when basically when you have regulation, um, you know, you have well, I was talking about lowest bidder. Um, when a company is given the opportunity to take a government
Contract.
contract, they bleed the crap out of it.
Yeah. As in,
And that is the crooked one of the major corruptive parts of our government, and it's And people wonder why those laws allow it and why it's allowed. It's because the people who run the positions in the government who allocate
Lobbyists.
these funds, well, it's not even lobbyists. It's people who worked for some company or a governor or some Congress dude or some oversight
Great
dude or
example in
somebody.
Tennessee is Bill Lee.
And then the minute they get out of it, they go to work for a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Or they go to work for some other, and that's exactly what it is. It's not even a lobbyist. It's people with interest with a company that get into the government so they control what's going on and they control what happens. And so therefore you can allocate all this extra money to fatten up all these pockets. So when you know, when they build an aircraft, there's a big thing years and years and years ago. They talked about, you know, they're looking at government airplanes. I don't know if it was a military thing or Air Force One or, you know, government aircraft. And like the soap dish in the bathroom was like $1,000 or some shit, you know, when they started itemizing. That's why people are freaking out about Elon doing what he's doing. That's not new. A lot of fucking people have tried to get in. Obama talked about it and hack up what's going on. And that's what it is people take advantage of the corruptibility of the money flowing through the government. There's way too much money involved. And people that want to enforce laws and make change should not be getting paid out the ass and incentivized with money. They should want to do it for the sake of change. But most of them don't. They do it for the sake of power. And all the way from a corrupt ass cop who wants to bully everybody up to a federant that, you know,
Well, it's kind of like businesses are designed to make money. And if you pursue that as a penultimate goal, you will inevitably, given enough time, create a monopoly or an oligarchy, depending on the laws of that place, which is why we need government. It's why not an anarchist, why I'm a libertarian, is primarily because government exists to regulate business in the favor of the consumer. Now, the obvious conclusion of business is to maximize profit without morality as a factor. The obvious
and
conclusion of politics is to act as though you're regulating business and to be actually taking money under the table from these businesses. That's the natural conclusion of a politician. So it gets into the problem is not with business. The problem is not with the government. The problem is with the American people not policing the government, which is our job.
to a degree, but when you're talking about business, what you're inevitably talking about is a market. And if we don't have a free market, that means the government regulates everything. With a
Yeah.
free market,
A free
there's a
market
lot of,
has a penultimate conclusion, which is not good for the consumer, which is
a
why I'm
free,
not
well,
entirely free market.
when you get into consumerism,
But
you
you
know,
think about capitalism without a regulatory system, they're going to that becomes dystopian really quick.
I mean, they become a new form of government.
That becomes it's like cyberpunk.
Yeah.
They become
well,
the government.
that, the thing being is that's when your monetary system is regulated. The idea of free market means barter and trade is still an existent thing.
You're saying the money itself regulates this?
The fact that one of the major falls is that our money with banks, interest is a big major screw up. And the fact that our monetary system is so controlled by banking systems, which is government regulated, and also what regulates the government. That's what people don't understand. We don't regulate our government. The banks do, because the banks
Well,
regulate all our money.
historically, people have regulated the government.
And
Historically, we've
historically
done that
speaking,
here in this
and, the-
country.
and until the Federal Bank Reserve fucking bought us out.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that
And
is the
so,
problem,
and I
isn't it?
hear
The main
people
problem
argue.
is the
Yeah,
banks, isn't it?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I hear people I hear people sitting at a bar argue back and forth, left and right, politics, back and forth, till they're damn near screaming at each other. And I look at them both and say, y'all do understand that the banks run it all.
That's a
And the
good point.
fact that y'all sit and argue about this
And then
is
Obama
why they
bails
get
out the
away.
banks when they fail. Yeah,
Thanks, Obama.
thanks,
But
Obama.
that's why that's why it's designed for everybody to argue about that, because that's why nobody sees it, because they're too busy arguing about how bad Trump is or how fucking shitty fucking Kabbalah is.
We're not, and the real oppressor is some elusive shadow government. It's not the thing right in front of our noses,
I
like
mean,
the
and I
bank,
don't, yeah, and
like
that's what I'm
the
saying. I
people
don't
who
even know,
actually have all
right?
of the money.
And I don't know that it's even a shadow organization. Like all those guys from back in the day
No,
are
that's what
dead
I'm
or
saying is
still
that's the
old.
narrative is
It's a
that it's a
system.
shadow organization. It's not the obvious enemy,
Right.
which is
Well,
the bank.
it's a system that got itself set up, and there's a handful of people that know how to bleed off of it. And those, it's very nepotistic. It's very who you know and what position you can seat yourself in. People seat themselves in positions in the government, and not for the sake of making good change. They do it for the sake of the power and
Oh,
what they're able to do with their commercial interest. They all got
so
companies doing some shit.
since I
So in
gotta
order
leave.
to improve the police, we have to get rid of the banks.
We got to get rid of a lot of bullshit laws.
Well, to
A
go back on
lot.
topic, since I
And a lot of those laws are
have to
based
leave
around
earlier.
on commerce
Uh,
and trade.
you got anything else, lazy? With actual like to do with cops?
No, not really. I was just, um, I do see Neve's point that better pay might actually be detrimental to
That's a
the
good
way
point.
that
I didn't
police
think about.
behave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you do want them to have higher standards, that kind of does become like part of it.
Yeah, I think that that also becomes an
I
issue.
understand where y'all are coming from with that. That is it's kind of one of those like, damn, you know, it makes sense. Much like soldiers or, things, but once again, these are positions of people that should be trying to put themselves out of work.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're doing your job
Uh,
successfully, then you make your job obsolete, kind of thing.
Yep. That's, that's what,
Which is
that's
not,
what,
there's no profit incentive in doing that, right?
and that's exactly what medical research should be doing. But as we
Right.
find, it does the opposite.
Yeah. It's kind of like
yeah.
Mr. Beast going to Africa and creating a water system where it's like
Yeah.
the government is pissed
Well, it
because
was, yeah.
they've been trying to do that
It was,
forever.
it was a foundation that had been making money.
Oh, a nonprofit. Okay.
It was like, well, yeah, I don't know if they're, yeah, but that had been doing it for, and they've been running around doing stuff. They just never taught the people how to use the stuff, or, you know,
Yeah, and then Mr. Beast, an independent YouTuber,
and they got mad because it took away from all the work they did. And it's
but
like, well,
but my
why y'all,
money.
right? And that's what that means is, you ain't got no funding coming in. But if you were really just about this, you'd be out there celebrating it. Like, oh my God, you're the save. You came in and did what we've been trying to do for years. Thank you so much. Awesome. We can close up shop and go elsewhere. And hey, come on with us over here and check out this other thing.
Well, we've been going for over 2 hours. Lazy and David, y'all have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got to edit this one, don't
Before this episode, I was like, Neef, help me moderate this. Mostly what I'm trying to do is make a conversation between David and Lazy. And then myself included, we both, we and I had a lot of back and forth, just the two of us, which is,
You brought up cops.
Yeah, yeah, we can't talk about. I should have known not to invite Neef if we're talking about cops.
I mean,
That's
Why?
my fault. That's my
That's why I
fault.
waited till y'all finished, and then I said, "Y'all gonna let y'all done, so y'all let me
I mean,
cook for a minute."
That's my fault.
I mean, to be fair, we agreed like right off the bat. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cop thing was like, oh, actually, we were like in complete agreement about this.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else for you guys?
no, be it.
Lazy?
no, not really. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. I'm actually I'm glad we did this. The cops thing was real short because turns out we don't have nearly as much area of difference as we do about immigration. But I'm proud of what we did here today, and we should do something again like this in the future.
Yeah,
That's great. I'd love to do it again.
Hell yeah.
this will be a fun edit.
Yeah, no shit. All right.
Don't report
See
if
ya,
I.
Alice.
Good night.
Bye.